Is there something happening in Africa right now? While we talk about the plague of the coronavirus, which it is, it's a worldwide, it's a plague, a pestilence, however you want to call it. World Health Organization may refer to it as a pandemic, but it's a plague. It's a pestilence. In Africa and the Middle East, while they are all restricted in policies due to what's happening, there is a second wave of a plague that began in 2020, earlier this year. The second wave is coming through, and it really, truly has a potential for far greater human impact and impact on human life than this coronavirus. And you know what it is? It's the second wave of deadly locusts that have been hatching out now for weeks and will continue through the summer. The fear is that this plague will bring the plague of hunger and starvation, affecting millions. It's already affecting many. So, Jimmy, I want to go to you for your thoughts on this. The Christian Post just ran an article, and I want to quote just a little bit from this article. There are others out there that are covering, so it's not just them, but I just picked this one. This individual wrote this, quote, "The historic spread of desert locusts that has left tens of millions in danger of food insecurity, I mean starvation, in East Africa, is expected to get 20 times worse as the United Nations predicts a dramatic increase in swarms of locusts throughout Africa and the Middle East in the coming months. The swarms now endanger crop planting. That's what's happening right now. They're coming right when things are being planted. The swarms in June and July will be at the time of harvest." So I'm still reading from the article, according to the UN Food and Agricultural Organization, the increasing swarms are unprecedented, increasing 20 times in size, with each grasshopper laying up to 900 eggs. Imagine that multiplication. The countries affected are Uganda, East Africa, Kenya, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, Sudan, Ethiopia, Somalia, Tanzania, and Iran. Jimmy, we've been talking about this before, but the precursors of final judgment that we read about in Matthew 24, they're going to be multiple times greater than what we're seeing, but we are seeing precursors of this, I believe. Can you add your comments to what I've said here and shared, and how this should motivate the mindset, the thinking, and the behavior of believers around the world at this time?
And Sam, you're absolutely correct. This is bad news as far as the Middle East and Africa are concerned. The locust swarms across Africa, you mentioned the nations coming out of Eastern Africa and in the Horn of Africa. It's affecting the entire nation almost. Now, these nations largely are facing starvation even as today without the locust problem. But the locusts destroying the crops as they've been planted at the time of harvest. This destruction, again, mentioned as 20 times worse than was ever predicted. They're on their way. These locusts are going to not only devastate Africa, the continent of Africa, but they're on their way into the Middle East. And this locust invasion is bringing about starvation. Again, we're looking at a portion of the world that hunger is just at the top level, even as it is today. And this is a precursor to foretold Bible prophecy. Just thinking, Matthew 24 is part of that, but when you look at Matthew 24 and compare it to the first judgments that are recorded in Revelation chapter 6, you see in verses 1 and 2 the Antichrist, deception. I believe he's alive and well. In verses 3 and 4, you see the alignment of the nations, and we've talked much about that on this broadcast. But in verses 5 and 6, hunger, starvation. It says a measure of wheat for a penny, 3 measures of barley for a penny. A measure of wheat is enough wheat to make bread for a family of 4 for one day, taking a day's wages. That was the denarius, a day's wages. And then the animal food. 1/4 of the earth's population is going to die. Now, that is in a period of time called the tribulation period. But the tribulation period has not started. What we're seeing is the birth pains of all of this, the prerequisite, the precursor to all this going to happen in the tribulation period. I was looking at Revelation chapter 6. Chapter 4, verse 1 says, "And John said, I heard as it were a trumpet talking with me, which said, come up hither. The rapture of the church is the next event." Throughout these terrible times that we're facing, just awful times in which we're trying to live today, we've got that blessed hope, not only that the Lord is still in charge, but he has promised that his son will come and the rapture will take place. We will be caught up. Those of us who know Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior will be caught up to meet him in the air. Now, that's an absolute statement. It is going to happen. And as we look where we are, we can't take our eyes off the fact that Jesus is going to shout, "It could be today."